You'd think that would be a straightforward question to answer. I think most people in politics, particularly energy politics, are more familiar with what's called a renewable energy standard, which is a requirement that utilities get a certain percentage of their power from renewable sources, wind and solar and geothermal, and there are fuzzy cases about what exactly counts under there. But the clean energy standard has long been a sort of moderate Republican alternative to a renewable energy standard. And all it would do is broaden the category of energy sources that count. So from renewable to clean, clean would also include natural gas, which emits about half the CO2 of coal, and coal with carbon sequestration, and nuclear power. Those energy sources, which are more favored by more people on the right, would also qualify as clean energy under the clean energy standards. The only thing it doesn't count as clean is unsequestered coal, dirty coal. So a clean energy standard, in effect, amounts to reducing the percentage of coal in the electricity mix. But of course, Barack Obama, who introduced this clean energy standard in his State of the Union, can't say the goal of this policy is to reduce the use of coal to make electricity, because coal is obviously well protected politically. So you can view the clean energy standard as sort of this Baroque legislative edifice built all because you're not allowed to say, let's just use less coal. That depends on the details of the clean energy standard, which are many and completely at this point undetermined. There's no, I mean, Obama introduced this clean energy standard in his State of the Union, but gave no details whatsoever about how it would work. He just gave a target, which is 80%, and a year, which is, I think, 2030. But he didn't give any of the details about what would and wouldn't count, and there's hundreds of questions to be asked, so it's too soon to tell what the effect would be. I think if you just take it straightforwardly, if we want 80% clean energy or clean electricity by 2030, and everything counts as clean except for coal, all that means is you're going to reduce the percentage of coal in the U.S. electricity mix from around 45%, where it is today, down to 20%. It's nothing to scoff at. Reducing coal, reducing dirty coal use is the number one environmental gain. So reducing coal use by half in the U.S. would be nothing to shake a stick at. The question of how a clean energy standard, a federal clean energy standard, would interact with state renewable energy standards is one of the great unanswered questions, and it was one of the questions at the center of this white paper that Bingaman and Murkowski put out to solicit ideas for how the thing should be constructed. Because you're going to end up with a federal policy that regards this set of energy sources, and then you're going to have these state policies that are about a much smaller and more restricted set of energy sources. That is going to be an unholy mess to work out. The worst case scenario, I think, from a climate hawk perspective, is that the federal standard would just preempt the state standards. And this is, of course, something that business and conservatives have been after for a long time. They would like to have one central standard at the federal level, and then they don't want, a bunch of different rules in a bunch of different states. They say that's complicated and increases their compliance costs, and et cetera, et cetera. So that will be the push, I'm sure. The ideal, I think, from a climate hawk perspective, would be for the federal standard to serve as a floor for the state standards, a sort of federal minimum that state standards can then build on top of. And that would be good, because there are lots of states still that don't have renewable energy standards, who have no standards whatsoever about bringing in clean energy. So it would at least introduce some minimum requirement for all states. anybody who has an interest in how the thing turns out should comment. I think it would be very much to the benefit, of environmental groups and energy groups and unions and public health groups, and of course industry groups. And there's a whole set of utilities that already have a lot of clean energy by this broad standard. A lot of utilities that have a lot of clean energy already, so they're going to want to get involved so that they get credit for what they've already done. I mean, there are so many interest groups and constituencies that stand to be affected by this. And I really think if they want their voice to be heard, now's the time. They need to get on Binghamton's radar. They need to put together some compelling comments and send them in. And there's not that much time left.